Hello, this is Tehila, High Priestess of the Coven of the Open Mind, and this is Wicca 101 Abridged. Hail and welcome. Today we'll be talking about and looking at some of the most centrally utilized tools within witchcraft, what they do, how do you use them, and what are their correspondences. I'm going to go over just like the 5 main tools. I'll reference a couple other ones, but so these are the 5 most witchy tools. The first tool that I want to discuss isn't really a tool. It's actually a symbol. So I'm going to show you a picture in my Book of Shadows. It's the pentagram. So here is the pentagram. The pentagram represents the elements. It's a pseudo-scientific way to describe how we relate to the higher planes of existence. It means it's not really science at all, but it's kind of a metaphor. It's something that's done in place of science to try to explain why something happens in nature. And systems like this are based on logic oftentimes, and they're not totally useless, right? They can be used as metaphors for actual science, but it is important to note the difference. So in this system, the pentagram is used to explain how energy becomes physically manifested. Note that the pentagram has air here, earth here, fire, water, and spirit. It's reversed. Spirit at the top. So the banishing and summoning pentagrams are actually derived from this chart. In order to summon air, you banish water, right? So you draw the pentagram towards air, and that summons it, but that's banishing water. So air and water are opposites. But if you go to summon earth, you actually banish spirit, drawing down from the top. So spirit and earth and fire are kind of together, the opposites of spirit, and that's because earth and fire represent our physical bodies, which you can't have and exist in the realm of spirit, while air and water represent our mental and non-physical selves, our spiritual selves, and so those are how you relate to spirit, right? So you see how there's the 2 that define you as a physical human being that are the opposite of spirit, and then there's the 2 that allow you to relate to spirit, and that's all like a very interesting connection between the different elements. And so it's essentially saying that the more physical modes of existence, that which ties us to our physical forms, okay, because so like the fire is the light within us, right? It's our souls, the spark of divinity that gives us agency and will, etc. Earth refers to our physical bodies, what roots us to the earth, the web of life that the earth weaves for us, for our survival. So the physical modes of existence are the opposites to the spiritual modes. And this makes perfect sense, right? Because spirits are the absence of physical embodiment. They're an echo of a life, right? So they're what happens to you when you don't have a physical form anymore. So life without the physical form is death. And therefore, in order to be dead, you must shed your physical form. And this is why we can only travel among the dead by proxy, giving some of our life up in order to experience or commune with what is essentially foreign energy. And in fact, it's foreignness, it's the foreignness of this spiritual passive energy which gives you goosebumps and that sensation that someone is watching you. So spirit active, so the death energy is spirit passive, and that's the opposite of earth. Spirit active is the conglomerate of all the physical elements, earth, air, fire, and water. So it's all of them together, and that's like, life energy, abstracted, like if you think about it like a prism, right? So the 4 elements are individual, like wavelengths almost of one energy. So this spirit active is the part of us that is capable of imagining a world in which we don't exist. It's the part of us that can visualize and imagine a world outside of time and space and reality. It's like the part of us that would trip on mushrooms or whatever, like that vibe, like that Alice in Wonderland type feeling, So it's the part of us that can imagine, and therefore the part of us that is connected to the higher planes of existence. So it's the part of life that exists on higher planes. See how that works? So it's life and death, both on higher planes, but one is, from so you get it. So for more detailed overview of this, actually, if you're interested in the planes of existence thing, you can actually head on over to the Kabbalah video from the Magical Discipline series, and I'll put that link in the description. So for simplicity's sake, just know that the pentagram symbol in magic is used to elevate protective circles, right? So you use the summoning and banishing pentagrams, you draw them to invoke the elements from that area, and that takes your ordinary space and raises it to a higher level, so you're in between the worlds, and time and space, don't exist anymore, and you can easily invoke energy from deity or link circles with people anywhere on the globe, right? That's the purpose of invoking the elements. And they will say that when you're in ritual, you're between the worlds, or the veil between worlds is thin, or the veil is thin, or whatever. So you'll hear all sorts of things like that. They also say that the veil is especially thin on 2 major holidays, on Beltane, which is coming up, May Day, and on Samhain. So one is for death and one is for life. So the one coming up celebrates spirit active, and the one in the fall celebrates spirit passive. So the pentagram can be used as a symbol of protection too. It's often means protection in a divine sense, and it's similar to like the rune algiz, if you know about runes. So note that the pentagram differs from the pentacle. Okay, so even though these terms are commonly used synonymously, the pentacle can mean a 5-pointed star, or it can actually mean any kind of necklace with any kind of symbol. It's from the French pont à col, right? So it's like, forget my pronunciation of that, but it's like pont, to hang, is to, and col is neck. So it's like to hang about the neck. It comes from like Gaulish, actually. And you can actually have a pentacle of any symbol. The pentacle can be a 6-pointed star. You might often use the symbol of planets or astrological signs. So here's a bunch of those here at the bottom page of the page here. You might use, the shape here for Mercury if you're trying to invoke energy that helps you do better communication skills. And you might do the spell on a Monday because that's Mercury's day, and then use his sign or whatever, So that's something that's common in magic as well. And then you might want to use different pentacles or combinations of them. Like I said, different ones based on the ritual intent, the spell work, the deity that you're honoring. Pentacles are made out of all sorts of materials, depending on the ritual as well. So you might use a silver pentacle for healing rites, maybe where you invoke Neptune as well. You could use clay. That's good for like vitality, suiting Mars. Same with bronze, brass, or gold. Or you could just draw the symbols on paper. Sometimes people will draw them and then like burn them in a fire or something, like the paper, draw them on bay leaves. That's really common. You can also just like have an offering plate that has a pentagram or a pentacle on it, and that's like something that you have on your altar or something like that. So a lot of people have altar cloths that have that on there as well. So it's a lot of different people do it. Most people would put it on the altar. They'd put it between the candles for the 4 quarters, so there'd be like a circle there, and then the candles are on the outside. So the pentagram is a big one. You'll find cloths, clothes, things with pentagrams on them. People will wear pentagrams to ritual. It'll be on the offering plates, the cups and chalices. Folks will have pentagram necklaces that they wear just for ritual. Some will have some that they wear just for ritual, and some that they wear every day. So people love pentagrams. It's nuts. Now, so it's important to pause a moment and talk about tools as a concept, I think. So tools are not really inherently magical, or rather like they contain energy and associations only, but nothing which would make a big impact on the world around you. Tools have vibrations to them. Like, so take wood, for example. So trees convert carbon dioxide into oxygen. So death into life for us humans, and that's a process of transformation. So this theme of transformation is inherent to the wood. So the structure of its cells, it's all about transformative growth, transforming things, taking one thing, turning into something else, etc. So when you hold a bit of wood, like a wand made out of wood, you can somehow feel this and become one with that sensation of transformation. And then if you just allow that influence to impact you, to put you in a different state of mind, then that theme of transformation is something that you'll feel even more in ritual. So, and this is the purpose of invocation, right? To take energy in and allow you to transform it into something else, or to allow it to transform you in some way, more commonly. So the wand, okay, because it's made out of wood, and that's what it represents, is a tool of invocation, of invoking deity, transforming oneself, etc. So note that this is exactly opposite to how wands are depicted in the media. So like in Harry Potter, like wands are shown like casting spells and like Wingardium Leviosa and doing damage and like acting like weapons, but that's not at all what wands do in real life. So that's just, you know, some fun fiction. But in real life, you know, if you wanted to do evocation magic where you're generating something from yourself and sending it out around you, generating energy with a certain intent, then that would be the role of the blade. Okay, so an Athame, it can be anything from a letter opener, which was my first Athame. I have it lying around here somewhere, but I can't find it since we moved into the new Covenstead. Yeah, new scenery, yay, new Covenstead. But some will use like a letter opener, and some will use like an actual huge sword. So some will have both. They'll have an Athame that's a dagger on the table, and then they'll have a sword that they use when they walk around the circle. So this is the tool which you use to focus energy outward from yourself with the intent of changing the world around you in some way. Athames are typically metal. You can get a wood one. You can also get a crystal one. They do different things. So the wood one, in my opinion, doesn't make as much sense, but you know, you should decide for yourselves. But I mean, consider the usage, right? So typically you're not focusing on transformation when you're doing evocation magic. You could be, and if that's like your thing, then by all means use a wood Athame. But most of the time when you're doing evocation magic, you're focusing on resonance and power, manipulation of energy. And this better aligns with metal. And I mean, just imagine like, okay, someone dropping a metal rod versus a wooden dowel, like onto concrete in a big empty room, like which carries more of effect? Like the metal one's gonna be like clang, like, you know. So notice too that metal daggers and swords are actual weapons. Not that Athames are usually used for combat because they're very Wiccan, and Wiccans don't usually do magical combat. But if you were going to curse someone or whatever, like you wouldn't use a wand, like Wingardium Leviosa, you'd use the Athame because it's a real weapon, right? So combat magic is a whole other topic, so I'm not really going to talk about it here. Nobody believes they're throwing fireballs at each other. That's not what we mean by combat. But anyway, so the Athame is a tool for evocation and spell work. It's being used to cast circle, to cast spells, and to consecrate tools. Most say that you can't draw blood with it. If you draw blood, it's useless because the Athame channels life magic, and blood from your veins is used for death magic and attracting spirits. So, you know, you don't usually mix life and death magic in the same tool. Like most of the time, so most of the time you have one tool and it does specific things, and you'd get another tool to do something else. So like you might have a knife that you use to draw blood, or you might use the boline for that. A boline is a white-handled knife. This is a bad example of one because it's like literally a utility knife, which is what the boline is for. It's for cutting herbs and stuff, but most of the time it would be shaped like a half moon, and it would look much fancier than this dirty old piece of crap that I've had in my drawer for years. But anyway, so the Athame is also seen as being phallic. It represents the divine masculine. In sex magic, which in Wicca takes the form of the Great Rite, right? So the Athame represents the male, and the chalice, the female. Get it? So when the two become one, push and pull, yin and yang, then you have life. So the Athame aligns with fire, and the wand with air. And this is because both involve force and will, and push, and the push portion of the universe called masculine in Wicca. So the polarity of both of these is male. However, one aligns with fire because one is about generation of energy from one's own inner flame, and the other is about air because it's more about listening to the wind for wisdom and guidance, right? Like taking things in, right? So that's the difference between these two, but they're both still masculine polarity. The next two tools, though, the chalice and the crystal, so these represent the pull of the universe, of the drawing energy in, imagining possibilities, and exploring potential. They represent nurturing and healing as earth and water, respectively. This is because earth sustains us and gives us home, and water heals us and gives us the ability to live and eventually procreate. Water is often aligned with the womb by many people throughout history. So again, we see the active and passive theme here. So crystals are active. They generate energy of their own with their unique crystalline structures. And there's lots of different types of crystals. There's, this is clear quartz. I think this is yellow calcite. This is salt, actually. This is like a tumbled one, so it's smooth. This is green aventurine. So all these have different magical alignments because they all have different energies that they put off, like unique signatures. This is lepidolite. I highly recommend this one, and solicite. These are really good for the upper two chakras and doing ritual. These are my favorites. Water, on the other hand, is passive. And by visualizing ourselves as a receptacle for water, like a chalice, then we are enabled to be more imaginative and receptive, just like the deep pools of life-giving liquid that you find all throughout mythology and all throughout the ages. So the chalice represents the divine feminine. It's being used with the female polarity in sex magic. So the idea is simple, right? Based on biology, there's nothing inherent here to say about gender or sexual orientation, right? It's just biology. When you have like the literal form of the aggressive little cell that comes for the, polite little cell that just sits around waiting for someone to find her, and boom, and then you have a baby. So the crystal as a ball, or often as a bowl of crystals. Sometimes folks put dirt with rocks in it on their altars, or sand. That represents femininity's stronger side, so the side that gives more of itself than should seem possible, and which is always weaving for the optimal potential of those whom it sustains. So different crystals and materials are chosen depending on the season, the working of the spell, the ritual, or just personal preference. Like I told you, the two I really like, so it's whatever. Most say that the chalice should not be metal, as the more metal you have on the altar, the more it interferes with the resonance of the Athame, reducing its power. But that is just, depends on personal preferences and beliefs. Typically, this is a wine glass that I got at IKEA for $2, so I usually just use something like this. This is glass, but you could use crystal or something nicer too. Some people have ones with pentagrams on them, or symbols of the Lord and Lady, whatever. And you can put wine, grape juice, pretty much any kind of juice. Sometimes I use a mug like this, and I put like tea or coffee or whatever the ritual is about, or whatever deity I'm invoking. So those are the 5 most important tools of Wicca: the pentagram, the wand, the Athame, the chalice, and the crystal. Other tools are often used for various things, like bells, for instance. I know I grabbed one here. Yes, here's a crystal bell. These are often used to symbolize transitions in ritual, or to consecrate or cleanse things using sound, which is masculine and aligned with air, right? Sound, and that's because it aligns with wind. It gives them the wind. So there are censers also of various shapes and forms. Some are used to represent wind because it aligns with wind. That would be like this one. This is just like a cone incense. This would be just wind pretty much. But this one uses a coal, and this is like a real pewter cauldron. So this one would be more like air and fire, and this is the kind you would use to like do circle, like air and fire. I consecrate the circle, blah, blah. Okay. Cauldrons are really important tools, especially in the fall and winter seasons. I didn't really go into them here because they're so important. They need their own video. They represent transformation. They can house both fire and water depending on the ritual working, so they can be both masculine or feminine, so it's kind of an androgynous tool. They represent destruction and creation, death and rebirth, and they often are very commonly used in the fall. They represent destruction, that whole like dark goddess aspect as well. So like they align with Caradwyn. So you should look up Caradwyn's cauldron myth if you're interested in this, because it's super interesting and awesome, and it ties into like the wisdom of scrying and transformation and all sorts of things. Okay, so witches also have lots of baskets usually. I've got some baskets for offerings, plates of some kind. Some baskets have offerings just for gods or spirits. Some for attendees, like to feast with the gods, so to speak, a time that's called cakes and ale. And then some have baskets lying around just for collecting flowers, for incense, etc. I have this really cute one that's got like a ton of shit in it right now, like that I just picked. So it's springtime. I pick a lot of herbs in the spring and then like keep them in jars for the whole next year. There may be statues of deities or candles representing them. Some use candles to represent the quarters. Some just use tools. Already mentioned the main ones. Some use both. So some will put a candle and bits of each element and the tool like in each thing. So like a bowl of dirt and a candle that's green, and so some people go crazy. Let's see. So skulls or bits of bones. So this is a skull, like that's made out of plastic, but I took like an owl pellet and dissected it, and then I melted wax over it. So there's bone in the bottom, and then I just burned tea candles on it. So that is how I connect with death energy. I also have like a little altar dish. This is like for the dead, basically. Like it's like goods and crystals and money and pearls and pretty things, and it's supposed to honor the dead. And then on the other side I have like an hourglass, and this like represents the life side of the altar too. So I have like that dichotomy on the altar as well. There's bowls of like consecrated salt water on the altar usually also. Oh, and actually pretty much everything on the altar should be consecrated. That's a good final note. Consecration. Okay, so consecration is a form of enchanting where sacredness is imbued into a tool. This essentially means that the tool is only for sacred use or use in secret circle for divine or ritual purposes. Anything can be cleansed. Cleansing just means removing past energy and replacing it with your own, so it feels like it's yours. Consecration goes a step beyond that, involving changing or charging the item with a specific type of energy, specifically your divine energy or the divinity of a deity that you invoke through you. So charging just means that you're putting energy into it, and it is effectively the same as enchanting something or someone. So putting energy in is charging or enchanting, and consecrating is a specific type of enchantment for sacredness and sacred energy. So everything on the altar should be consecrated so that there's no mundanity left within those items. There's nothing to distract you from your true purpose of doing a ritual or doing divine work. So you can solely stay focused on the task at hand without thinking about how you bought something or how something needs to be polished or that sort of thing. So that's the point of it. So yeah, so go to flea markets, go to occult shops, find some sticks outside and turn one into a wand. Do whatever you have to do. Get yourself some tools. They're not necessary, but they are nice and they look good. And having an altar is, it's kind of an important, like, this is my personal space, Even if you have to put it out and keep it in a bag and just when you go places, you set it out. So get yourself some tools, get them consecrated. Just a simple blessing, like I consecrate this wand to be used in love and light by the will of the Lord and Lady, so mote it be. That simple like that. Get some olive oil and steep mint in it for like 48 hours, then remove the leaves and add some fresh ones. Chop them up, and then rub that onto the tool after consecrating it. So there are many techniques that you can do for this, but that's a basic one. So then you're all set. And I hope this is helpful. I know it was a slightly longer video, but please comment your questions. Reach out to covenantofopenmind@gmail.com. Thanks for watching Wicca 101 Abridged, and from all of us here at the Covenant of the Open Mind, blessed be.